Welcome everyone to Remote Rehab's fifth webinar in our series on positive mindset. We're nearly completely all sold out of tickets today, so thank you to everyone. We've had someone just from Chicago, so yeah, our worldwide access and community is growing. So welcome. We're going to be doing a Q&A in the Q&A box. So if you have any questions that you have for the panelists today, then put them in the Q&A and I'll be behind the scenes collating all those questions together. And we're going to have some interaction tonight, as Karen and Chris alluded to. So all of that will be happening in the chat. Our next webinar in the series is about our remote rehab community platform, and that's halfway sold out. So if you want a ticket for that, that's next Monday at 7. So without further ado, we're going to start with the webinar. I'd like to introduce Caroline and Christina, who are the co-founders with myself of Remote Rehab. They're amazing coaches, facilitators, and people. And I'm lucky enough to work with them. And I can't wait to hear this webinar since I haven't heard it. So I'm going to be learning alongside all of you guys. So yeah, let's make a start. Thank you.
Oh, bless you, Liana. That's so sweet of you. So as Liana said, I'm Chris, and I'm a coach and I'm a facilitator. So for me, working with people's motivation and mindset is crucial to all the work that I do. I'm also a qualified hypnotherapist, so later on I will be touching a little bit on sort of state management and trance and how important that is as part of our positive mindset. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an outline of what we're going to do tonight. So we're going to start in a minute, and our colleague Sharon, she can't be with us tonight because she's somewhere, I believe, somewhere in the depths of Somerset. She's on holiday. So she's recorded a video. So we're going to be starting with her video, which will be looking at the neuroscience of a mindset. We're then going to move into a little bit about the research that's around the benefits of a positive mindset, and also how how a positive mindset is structured. And then we're going to move into, Caro's going to move into a deep dive into one of the aspects of a positive mindset, which is gratitude. So Caro's going to be taking us on a wonderful journey around the hints and tips of how to facilitate gratitude with our patients during the rehabilitation journey. So without further ado, Caro's now going to drive everything, and hopefully up on the screen is going to come a video, and we're going to be listening to Sharon, who's going to introduce herself, and she's going to be talking about the neuroscience of a positive mindset.
Hello, I'm Sharon Milroy, and I'm pleased to be with you today exploring positive mindset and how that informs you as a therapist working in rehab and remotely. And so one of the things that we're going to move on to looking at now is what the neuroscience, how that informs us about the emotions. And so let's go to the slides. So what I want to share with you is this model called Emotions, Energy for Action, and it's taken from the work of Professor Paul Brown and others. And what this shows is what happens in the brain and how we move into different emotions and the effects and triggers of those emotions, and therefore the impact on that positive mindset that we want to explore. So what you can see here are 8 basic emotions, and we're just going to explore those. And as we build on this during the rest of the webinar, we'll be really exploring how to engender the positive mindset. So I want to take you to the cheese wedge there, the mustard colour, which is labelled potentiator, that's kind of sticking out there. So what happens in the brain is that we have stimuli coming at us all of the time. Our brains are wired to search out and link to different experiences we've had in the past. So all of these emotions here lead to different types of energy. And in our brains, our amygdala is sorting out what our individual reactions are to certain stimulus. So the potentiator is about potential energy that is being generated from the particular stimulus we're experiencing, from our library of experiences that we've had in our lives before. So as you can see there, the energy that is being triggered there is about startle and surprise, and it's really then about having the energy for action. And we're working out which type of emotion and energy we need to go into. So if we stay with the startle surprise for a moment, that energy is there are industries based on it. So amusement parks with roller coasters, it's that sort of energy. Hearing a comedian speak, with bated breath, waiting to hear the response, and we may be slightly disgusted with what the punchline is, or excited joy. So we can go either way, and all of our experiences come through this type of situation of sorting, and depending on if something in the past has had a big impact on us, it will be wired with really strong emotions, whereas other things will just kind of wash over us. So that's the potentiator energy, and emotion. So if we just look at some of the others, we've got 5 survival emotions there on the left as you look at this, which are the emotions about escape and avoidance. So we will have learnt those when we were really young. It's about our survival. That's how it's been wired into the brain as human beings in our evolution and our individual journeys as well. So you can see here we've got sadness, shame, disgust, anger and fear as basic emotions. So if we just take those, the sadness will trigger something about something being lost to us, and so these, what I'm hesitating over is these lead to, as you can see, that around the greater arc, they lead to either the sort of freeze, flight, fight or fright responses that we have. They're hardwired into us. If we move up to shame, we may be shamed. We might be shamed into something that is external to us, or an internal shame. So it might be something about our own perception of ourselves. With disgust, the trigger is often about sort of getting away from something. So we might be disgusted by an object, a taste, a smell, or we just might be disgusted by a thought, again, that somebody else has generated in us, or our own thought. We could be disgusted about ourselves. Anger is the trigger there, is often about having our goals blocked. So I might be annoyed with myself, might be annoyed that I didn't do those exercises, I vegetated on the sofa instead, or I might be angry at somebody else, maybe is getting in my way. If it wasn't for them, it would all be fine. And then fear, I might fear for my welfare. So maybe I think there's an actual harm that's going to happen, or maybe it's just a perceived one. I might be fearful of an email, so I might not be fearful anymore of the saber-toothed tiger, but I might be fearful of keeping on top of my email, as an example. So you can see here that these 5 survival emotions can generate the cortisol in us. And what we know about cortisol as a hormone is that it can absolutely fuel us for the fight or flight. What it's not so great at being able to do is create the capacity for learning. as you know, it just draws everything into the center. It's about being able to get away, that avoid or escape. So great in a crisis, not so great for relationships or for learning, or positive mindset even. So if we flip over to the more attachment side of things, we've got excitement and joy and love and trust. And so these are really key to relationship building, and in the context of today, of really building positive mindset to enable change, to enable moving forward with something. Love and trust is a survival emotion as well, and that is very much about when we were helpless as little people, really little, we were dependent on other people. So as you know, in terms of our evolution, you know, the sort of hopefully the loving relationship of our carers, hopefully, you know, our parents or our significant carers. And what we know is when love and trust is absent, so for an example, with the Bosnian conflicts, Bosnian refugees, when babies and small children were kind of kept alive in cots, but didn't have almost the sort of the loving interaction, that, you know, some perished and some evolved as people, but with very difficult sort of transactional relationships rather than the sort of a loving attachments. So excitement and joy, the jury's out on whether this is a survival. What we in neuroscience terms, I'm sure there'll be some studies that tell us that it is. But the point here is that excitement and joy is often what we strive for as human beings. It's about a sort of meaning and the happiness that we may be searching for, and certainly as patients, there's that rings true as well, because although it's got excitement and joy there, in this context you can also add motivation in there, as motivation for the, you know, to move something forward, for something to be a better state, to have achieved goals. So you can see there the combination of hormones, of neurotransmitters that these emotions generate. And so we've got the sort of dopamine, which, as you know, is about reward. It's about being working towards the outcomes, which noradrenaline does. So although it's got pain inhibitor there, it also has an impact in our outcomes that we want, and whether when we try on an outcome, is that something that I really want to work towards, or is that something that actually I want to get away from. And it's really important to listen out for that, because if I want to move away from the outcome, then it's probably not the right goal for me. We've got serotonin there, as you know, release the sort of happiness. It's all about our mood. And what's really important, and I'm sure you've experienced this as therapists, is that our mood as the therapist is also a contagion. And so with whatever else is going on in our lives, how can we pause that and park it and have be displaying the emotion, be emoting the emotion, to invite the patient to join us there. And then oxytocin and the love glue. So whilst I completely agree with being politically correct and having very clear professional boundaries, at a level I also believe as a therapist that I need to find the angel within all of my patients and clients, and have a joy and a love for them as a person, because I believe that emotes and contributes to the work that I'm doing with them. And then the last thing on this is I want you to look at the sort of wonder fulfillment and play that this generates. So in contrast to the other side, which is about fight, flight, freeze and fright, with these emotions, what we're generating here in our, as we emote these, is wonder within the world, in ourselves, about feeling fulfilled and getting fulfillment, and about a sense of play, which is really where learning is. And then if I just take you to this next slide, the point that I want to make with this, so a representation of the brain that you may have seen before, so the triune brain, or three brains, from the work of P.D. McLean, a different way of describing the brain, but really this is looking at the sort of evolutionary way of exploring the brain's how it evolved. Our reptilian brain, all about survival, the limbic brain, the early evolution of looking after our young that we did as mammals, and then the neocortex being the executive mind, where our problem solving and logical thought is. Now the limbic and reptilian brain is where those 5 basic survival emotions of shame, sadness, fear, anger and disgust are. That's hardwired into us, whereas the joy, excitement, love and trust is really at play in the neocortex, and that is where learning and growth is. So hopefully that gives you an outline of the emotions and how and where we're wanting to get with patients around the wonder and fulfillment and play, and we'll expand on more of these with the positive emotions from the work of some others as well.
So the science is out there. I think the Western science is now sort of catching up really with the Eastern sort of philosophies and beliefs, which is that mind, body and spirit are one. And so what we think is how we become. So I want to introduce you. I'm sure you guys have met these 3 people before, but they are 3 people who I absolutely love. 2 of whom I've actually met and 1 I haven't. So we'll talk a little bit about them. So Joe Dispenza is a chiropractor, but he's now very influential and runs all sorts of incredible workshops around healing and the power of our minds to help us in our healing process. So I don't know whether any of you know his story, but Joe Dispenza had an accident when he was very young, in his early 20s, and he damaged his back really badly. And he was rushed to the hospital, and after all sorts of scans and examinations, the result was he damaged his spine, as far as the clinicians were concerned, to such an extent that he was going to be living with lifelong pain and potentially damage which was irreversible. So the advice that they gave him at that point was, we think you should have surgery, we think you need emergency surgery, and we need to fuse your spine together, and we also need to do some other things in order to enable you to walk. And he was a chiropractor, he was training as a chiropractor at the time, and he said, no thank you. And he discharged himself. He went home, took to his bed, and decided he was going to do 3 things. The first thing he decided to do was to step into a positive mindset and step into the absolute 100% belief that when he chose to get up, he was going to be healed. That was the first thing. The second thing he did was he decided to use visualization, and he decided that as he understood the spine so well, he was going to imagine his own spine, and he was going to imagine his own spine healing. And the third thing he did was he recognized that that wasn't just going to happen if he just did that for a few moments a day. He dedicated 2 hours a day of very deep meditation, focusing on his spine, imagining himself walking and imagining himself with flexibility and movement. After 3 months, he got up, got out of bed, and within a few days of getting up and walking, he was back to work. When he went back to have scans, they discovered that all of the damage had been reversed and he was absolutely fine. So from a personal perspective, I think Joe Dispenza is an amazing individual, because not only has he experienced it for himself, but he's also spent probably the last 20 years of his life working with others and doing brain scans and working with visualization and meditation, coupled with all sorts of other techniques to support and help people to heal their bodies and heal their minds. Dr. Bruce Lipton, I've never met. I have met Joe, and I attended a whole series of workshops with him, and he's an incredibly inspirational guy. Bruce Lipton I haven't met, but I love his work, and he's a biologist. And as many of you know, he really talks about the fact that what we think can absolutely have incredible impact on our cells. And because our bodies are constantly evolving, if we're in the right mindset, in a positive mindset, and we're using things like visualization and meditation, we can reverse all sorts of damage. The final person that I want to introduce you to is Barbara Fredrickson, and she's one of the leading lights in positive psychology. And Barbara's done a huge amount of research, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, into the power of positive emotions. Now, whereas the other two guys tend to focus on the body and what happens to our bodies, Barbara tends to focus on what happens to our capacity and our thinking. And as Sharon alluded earlier on, when we're in a positive mindset, we are so much more available to learn and to grow, and particularly in the rehabilitation process, it means that we can do so much more in terms of problem solving, in terms of the way that we do our exercises. So much opens up when we're in that positive mindset. So, Caro, do you want to just flick to the next slide? Thank you. So those of you who attended our webinar on assessing capacity for change, you'll remember this model. Just want to look at it from a slightly different perspective now. And just to think about, our mindset is made up of 4 elements. It's made up of our response to our physical environment and to our bodies. So what we know is that when our environment is conducive to us and we enjoy being in our environment, and we can really connect to the enjoyment of exercise and movement, that can have a massive impact on our mindset. There's all sorts of research, as I'm sure you guys all know, into the impact of being in the outdoors and of moving around, and the impact that that has on both our mental and physical health. Our mental health is very much here about the positive thoughts, the thoughts that we choose to think. Most of us repeat our thoughts day in, day out. And I know that from the work I do with my clients. When we start to explore what are the thoughts that you're thinking, they're thinking thoughts on a sort of a repeat basis. So this is about inviting our patients and our clients to step into thoughts that are supportive and productive, and to focus on those memories that support us rather than the memories that take us into, as Sharon talked about earlier, those other states like sadness. Because as soon as we're into sadness and anxiety, that shuts everything down and makes it more difficult for us to move through our rehabilitation. We then obviously want to talk about, how important it is our emotional state, and being with the people and the animals and the experiences that really evoke joy and delight and happiness for us, so that we can access all of the fantastic benefits of really experiencing our positive emotions. And then finally, this section that we all call spirituality, which can be about belief in terms of our religious beliefs, but it's also really about our meaning. So it really being involved in activities that give our life meaning, and that give us that motivation to get up in the morning and to really embrace life. So that's the structure, if you like, of the positive mindset. We can flip to the next slide, please, Caro. Thank you. So back to Barbara. I'm a bit of a fan of Barbara's. I got involved in a course that she ran with other people called The Science of Happiness, which we'll put some links to later. If any of you haven't done it, or haven't ever heard of it, it's a fantastic program. And it looks at basically the science behind our happiness. And so, as I said, Barbara's been doing a huge amount of research. And what she's discovered is that a positive mindset really does help us to think differently. It enables us to access the bigger picture. So when we are feeling sad and anxious, everything gets much smaller. And so we start to go in on ourselves. And it's therefore very difficult for us to think beyond what's really going on for us and start to imagine new possibilities and to think beyond what's happening to us now. So when we're in a positive mindset, we're able to think bigger, we're able to take in much more information, we're also able to be much more creative and problem solve. So I've certainly noticed with my clients that when we shift into a positive mindset, or they shift into a positive mindset, suddenly things become possible and they become far more able to think of new and different ways to do things than they do when they're spiraling into anxiety and fear. Positive emotions or positive mindset also underpins our ability to bounce back and our resilience. It also, when we're in a positive mindset, we can reframe trauma. When we're in anxiety, trauma's trauma and we're really deeply embedded in it. But when we're in a positive mindset, that enables us to think about, well, okay, so it was a very difficult and tragic experience that happened to me, but I'm still alive and I'm still here today. And so I can start to reframe that. And many people that I know we all work with will reframe their traumas into learning experiences and transformation experiences. We also know that positive mindset means that we're better at exercise because we've just got more energy. And as we've already said, it can impact us at a cellular level. It can impact our heart. And those of you who've come across all the heart math stuff, there's all sorts of evidence to talk about the impact that being in a positive mindset has on our heart and our immune system. And obviously it also increases our levels of trust. So the next slide, please, Cara, thank you. So what does it take for us to be in a positive mindset? Well, I love this particular picture because it always makes me smile, because a friend of mine's got a beautiful black Labrador. And one of the most important things is triggers, is having things which really activate our positive mindset. So stepping into a positive mindset, the first thing we need to be able to do is to be curious, because curiosity is key to really exploring the potential and possibilities. And so positive mindset is all about the potential and possibilities of new things and new ways of doing things. And so curiosity is a really important thing. So it's important when we're working with our patients and our clients to create an environment where curiosity is possible. It's also important to have awareness so that we're creating a space where our clients and our patients are really becoming aware of what is going on for me and what are those triggers. So when I'm exercising, what is it that means that I can do more exercise and that I'm really excited about it? And what is it that really dampens my enthusiasm and gets me to think, I don't want to do exercise today? What is it? What's going on? And often it can be my surroundings, it can be the people around me, it can be all sorts of things which have an impact on how I'm actually experiencing something. We've also touched a little bit on catching ourselves with judgments of self and others. Again, when we start to judge, we start to look for faults. When we start to look for faults, we take ourselves from positive into anxiety or fear, and that can have a real dampening effect. So we really want to catch ourselves finding moments where we're really open and appreciative of ourselves. It's really important to work with our clients to help them to recognize patterns and habits. So the triggers are important, and those triggers then can lead to us understanding the habits that we run. And also becoming conscious of the words and phrases that not only we hear others use about us or in our orbit, but also the words and phrases that we use about ourselves. And whether we're saying things like, you know, oh, do you know, I just annoy myself so much, I frustrate myself, or whether I'm saying, do you know, I'm really proud of myself and I'm really pleased with what I'm achieving. And it's also important to notice the triggers and links to worry and fear. And we've talked a little bit about that before, but those cycles that we get ourselves into, and the importance of introducing appreciation and self-compassion with our patients. The next slide, please, Cara, thank you. So this is the work of Barbara, and she's identified very beautifully, and I think I use this a lot when I'm really working with my clients around where are they, and we talked a little bit about that in assessing our capacity. This is for me about how we start to really think about, you know, how do I support my clients to be inspired? Because what we know is that inspiration will trigger all sorts of things, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So how do I create interest? Because once I'm interested in something, all sorts of things improve. So I just want to go to the next slide and just have a little look at these forms of positivity and what they access. So when we're inspired, and we're inspired by the people, or we're inspired by the place that we're in, we can access courage and stretch. Because inspiration for me is the doorway into courage and stress. Interest is the doorway into concentration and commitment, because when we're interested in something, we can really start to commit and concentrate on something, and we can increase the amount of time that we spend on something. Pride is the access point for success and self-confidence. And as we've talked about when we talked about assessing capacity for change, being self-confident and successful is a real key to us being able to achieve more. Amusement accesses playfulness, and when we're in that playful place, we're prepared to experiment a bit more, we're prepared to try things out, and we're also prepared to be a little bit vulnerable. Joy is the access point for delight and for judgment free, so for appreciation. Awe, now awe's beautiful. Awe are those moments when we're just really quiet and we're I don't know, in a very beautiful place, and we're looking at the mountains, and there's just that sense of peacefulness and wonderment. And that's a beautiful, beautiful access point for meditation. So often people will say they'll go somewhere absolutely awe-inspiring so that they can actually access the meditation, as is serenity. So awe and serenity for me sort of go together. Awe is the wonderment and serenity is the peacefulness. When we can access hopefulness, we're therefore able to access goal setting. When we can access gratitude, we can access appreciation. And of course, when we appreciate something, we've got so much more vitality. And when we access love, and that, I mean, the general universal concept of love, we can access connection. When we feel appreciated and we feel connected, we're able to be vulnerable, we're able to be open, and therefore we'll be able to experiment and explore so much more. So what we're going to do now is Caro's going to deep dive into one of these called gratitude. But before we do that, I just want to quickly talk about the fact that we can practice positivity. Positivity is something we can develop. It's all about practice and habit forming. And we evoke positivity, as we all know, through our memories and our moments. And when we find the right photos and the words and the objects and the music and the scents and the tastes and the tactile sensations, and potentially even create a portfolio, we can access those emotions. And when we access those emotions, we're able to do so much more in our rehabilitation, because we have so much more energy available to think beyond and to act and to do all sorts of things. And we've also got the opportunity to really start focusing on our bodies and really concentrating on what's going on inside ourselves, imagining ourselves moving our arms, imagining so much more than we've currently got, as we're experiencing right here, right now. Thank you. Caro.
Thank you, Chris. So, gratitude. So yes, I'll tell you a little bit about me to start with. My interest in healing of all sorts came about because 41 years ago, I had a son that was born with brain damage, and he also, we discovered later, he was autistic and he had severe learning difficulties. And that really took me on a journey to learn about therapies, alternative therapies. And I suppose really for the last 40 odd years, I've been a teacher, a therapist, a coach, a healer, a mentor. And finally now my interest and speciality really is dissolving and reprogramming more useful ways of being in our lives to really thrive, not just survive. So yes, today I'm talking about gratitude. So we're going to cover in this presentation what is gratitude, a little bit about the science behind gratitude, therapist's role, how can we model gratitude for our patients, supporting patients to introduce gratitude into their daily life, the 3 keys to recognise and practice gratitude, patient self-scoring of scope for gratitude. And I think we can have a bit of fun with those 2 things. And I'm going to ask you to score yourselves on those, so get ready to do some scoring. And then at the last slide, we're going to have a little exercise to rewire the brain, a 21-day practice, which would be wonderful if you tried it. And in 21 days, let us know how you got on. So let's start with what is gratitude. I mean, most of us probably know what gratitude is, but this can be really quite difficult to define. Is it an emotion or a virtue or even a behaviour? Could it even be defined as a strength? And I like to define it as a strength. I like to think of it as an intrinsic strength that we can actually work on and grow, almost like working a muscle. The other thing is it a spiritual sense of state of being? And there's so many things that gratitude means, for different people. And I'm sure you've got some ideas about that yourself. The one thing is a genuine feeling of gratitude for the goodness in our lives, we know helps us to connect to something larger than ourselves as individuals. Whether that is to another person or other people, it's to perhaps nature, and that's my favourite thing. I love people, but I love nature, an animal, or some type of higher power. Oh, sorry, I seem to have clicked on something by mistake. So let's have a little look at the science. Studies of neuroscience have identified brain areas that are likely involved in experiencing and expressing gratitude, providing us with further evidence for the idea that gratitude is an intrinsic component of the human experience. Additionally, there's a few studies who've identified specific genes that may underlie our ability to experience gratitude. And positive psychology defines gratitude in a way where scientists can measure its effects. Some of us might argue that gratitude is more than feeling thankful. It's something much deeper, a deeper appreciation of somebody or something that produces a much longer lasting positivity. So how about, as therapists, modelling gratitude? If we're going to actually coach in gratitude or ask somebody to think about gratitude, my belief is that we need to embody the practice first, so that we're really coming from our own inner knowing. So I would always say, practice what you preach, or practice and get used to it so that you really know it inside out. And then you can introduce it in a very natural way. Because I think the thing is, people often say, when would I introduce this practice? When somebody's perhaps been in great trauma. And for me, I think it's about using your intuition. And I'm sure that all of you on here have learned to trust your intuition, especially when you're dealing with patients, and you just know when something's right and when you can sort of introduce them. So think about for a moment about your own qualities and how you use them to make the connection with your patients. And how often do you model gratitude when you're with them? And now we're experiencing working with patients online, it may very well feel more challenging compared to when we were, say, going into their houses, when at least you had an opportunity then to say thank you for a cup of tea and show gratitude. What could you be grateful for on an online call? I would say, you know, always start with the smallest thing. For example, and you're going to fill in the blanks here. I am so grateful to you that you've managed to be with me on the call today because, and think about perhaps, you know, some patients that you've been working with over the last week, whether you were able to express some type of gratitude in those moments. So how did you express gratitude? And how does that make you feel? If you recall that moment now, or moments, and it doesn't have to be with a patient, it could be any time, and you've expressed and you've really felt that gratitude within you, how does that make you feel? And I think for me, it's about bringing that forwards into the sessions that I do with people, that if I come into the session with that gratitude, well, you know, embodied in me, and I'm thinking about what I can be grateful for, I know that I give a better service. Now let's flip it on its head here. How about your patient? How does your patient express gratitude and how do you respond? Now I was thinking about this earlier, and there seems to be a couple of examples to me that I wanted to point out. So what about if they show you gratitude personally? So what if they said to you, I'm so grateful that you're spending the time with me today. How would you respond to that compared to non-personal? For example, your patient said, I'm grateful, it could have been so much worse. So they're speaking about their own self. They've been through trauma, and you know, some patients, I'm sure, would say to you, gosh, you know, it could have been so much worse. So wasn't there to rescue me, or whatever, I could have died. You know, how do you respond to that? And there's no sort of right or wrong way. I'm just interested for you to ponder that, because very often when somebody compliments you or they give you gratitude, in the way you receive it is really important. And are you open to receiving gratitude? So, yeah, how do we model acceptance for their gratitude in those responses? I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Right, so benefits of gratitude. So there's a few here and we can just go through these quite quickly. So I want to get on with the fun stuff with you. So numerous studies have found that treating ourselves with compassion, and I think compassion also comes from gratitude. It's easier to feel more compassionate when you have gratitude. When confronting personal suffering promotes mental health. We know this, it's been studied, and it's wonderful to have all these benefits known now. Greater self-compassion, again, gratitude has consistently been associated with low levels of depression, anxiety, less fatigue, lower levels of cellular inflammation, and I think that's really important, because clearly if you're healing, inflammation reduces the healing. Greater resilience, increased happiness and positive mood, more satisfaction with life, less materialistic, less likely to experience burnout, better physical health, better sleep and less fatigue. All these positive attributes just from practicing gratitude and being in a grateful type of energy. So we're now going to get onto a little bit of interactive. So I'm going to, just to prepare, I just want to make sure that you know where the chat is, because I'm going to ask you to respond. So anybody who's up for responding, I'd be really grateful. And so let's just make a start on this. So we're going to have a look at a diagram first, a nice, simple, easy one. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you anything really difficult. So here's one I made earlier. So this is about gratitude and strength. So if we look at the top, we're looking at, as I said earlier, gratitude as a strength. And if we look at the sort of 1 to 10, you can see where this is going already. So if we're looking at the diagram, we're looking at 10 as being fully sort of embodied, if you like, in gratitude. We're looking at 1, gratitude being hardly conceivable. A patient would be in their darkest place, possibly at the beginning of their journey after trauma. 10, as I said, would be well embodied. It's become more normal, the way they have chosen to embody their lives. The patient would be predisposed to look for the good in most situations, and even when the circumstances were challenging, they would be able to express gratitude for that something, that little something within the experience. So I thought, let's have a bit of fun and interact together. So we could use our own self-scores. So I want you to look, where are you currently today? What's your current score today? And what do you feel, personally, your scope for gratitude is, your strength of gratitude? So if you've got your best foot forwards, what do you think your scope is? So just pop in the chat box the 2 numbers, your current use of gratitude, and then your scope for where you feel with some practice you could reach. Great, okay. Good, that's lovely. Okay. Now, I can't actually see your scores, unfortunately, but I'm sure that Chris probably can. I'm sure that they're coming in.
They're lovely, actually. They are really good. I think it's interesting, isn't it, when you start to think about where am I at the moment? Where do I want to move to? And what would enable me to move? And I think there's that beautiful opportunity, isn't there, to actually think about, well, how often do I really embody gratitude in the course of the day? And that, I think it's really exciting.
Absolutely. So what are some of the scores? She disappeared, so tell me some of the scores.
Oh, we had some 3s and some 10s. Go on, Liana, what have you got?
Most people are between a 3 and a 6 as a starting point. And then most people go up to between a 7 and a 10. And I think it's interesting because I put a 9 and I'm thinking, why didn't I put a 10? What is stopping me? But I guess that's part of the experience of doing the score.
Yeah. So I think you can use this with your patients, this scoring system. And of course you can use it for all the other qualities as well, but we're just sort of focusing on gratitude at the moment. Okay, so we're just going to move on now. So next we're going to look at the 3 keys, and we're going to just move to the next slide. So we have got pause and present, reflect, recall, and imagine and design. Now we're going to start with pause and present. Now, you might disagree with me, but I've tried this. I can't go into gratitude if I'm thinking, what next, what next, what next in my life? So I'm thinking, I've done that, I've got this to do, I've got the washing to put out, I've got a presentation to write, I've got to go running or walking or stumbling or whatever. I can't think about gratitude in those moments. So the first thing that you need to do when you want to do gratitude is to stop. You've got to pause. And you've got to come into the present. If you're at that stage, or your patient is at that stage where they can pause, but they literally cannot find anything to be grateful for. That is, if they're saying to you, my life is so bad at the moment, you know, they might be saying, I wish, you know, that accident or that stroke I had, I wish, quite frankly, I wish I was dead, that it would have been easier. They're not going to be in that place where just pausing, taking a couple of breaths and they go, oh, I'm really grateful. So if they're obviously in the stage where they're willing to work with this, that there's a sort of little bit of a chink of curiosity about how this could improve their life so that you can actually start working with it. You may then go to reflect and recall. And that, as it says, you go backwards. You go backwards to a time. Was there a time when you did feel grateful, that you did feel gratitude? And you're able to stay in that place talking about that time where they were grateful and in gratitude. And you can talk to them about the feelings they had at that time. You can talk to them about what it felt like, what it smelt like. Was there other people? Was there a taste? Was it a meal? You know, was there something? What was special about it? And you can work with that and get them to feel the feelings of gratitude from that time. And then you can either come back with that to pause and present, and so that they're staying with those feelings and you're able to affirm that, and they've brought that feeling forwards into pause and present. And that might be enough. That might just be enough, that just little doorway, that little chink. It may be that you can go from pause and present straight from there to imagine and design. And imagine and design is literally that. It's around saying what you're grateful for and then imagining, and this is where your scoring will come up, imagining what it could be like if I was in gratitude more of the time. So if I spent more of my day looking for the things that I was grateful for, and what would that look like? How would it feel? Who are the people around you? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? You know, to bringing all the senses in, whatever's appropriate. So we're just going to have a little game with this now. So we're going to start, and for everybody who'd like to interact with this would be lovely. So I want you just to take a moment. So I'm appreciating that many of you probably had quite a challenging day and probably a challenging few months. And I just want you to allow yourself to put that down for a moment. So we just go into pause together. And just imagine you're just here now. There is nothing else. There's nothing else to think about. You're just in this present moment. And you're pondering and you're curious about gratitude. And as you're sort of just opening to gratitude, opening to this feeling, you're just taking some beautiful deep breaths. And you're just allowing all the stress or anything that you're holding just to drain out of you on the outward breath. That's just like you've got these two things going on. You've got a tiny little bit of curiosity about gratitude, and you've got this lovely in and outward breath that's just letting go of the stress of the day or the months or whatever, and you're just really releasing and letting go. And just do that for a few moments, just some inwards and outwards breaths. And just allowing everything to still down and pause. And I just want you to start thinking about, where are you with gratitude today? Is there anything that you've been grateful for? Is there anything that you could find, however difficult or challenging your day might have been, is there something there that you could say, a really small thing, start with something really tiny, that you've been grateful for? It may even be something that you think to yourself, gosh, you know, I passed through that so quickly. I'm really grateful for it now. I sort of missed it. Or it could be some big event that you've had today that you have huge gratitude for. It doesn't matter whether it's big or small. Just notice what you notice about the feelings and notice where you are. And if it's something that's come already, perhaps you'd like to share that in chat with us. So you could share a feeling. You may not want to share the thing, but you might like to share a feeling of kind of how you're feeling now, and whether that's different from, say, half an hour ago. And just take your time. And for some people, that's enough. You know, that's just enough to introduce it. As I said before, it's just a sense that they were able to go to that place and reach that place. Now, for those of you perhaps who found that a little difficult, or you just want to keep joining in, you're just having a bit of fun, a bit of relaxation, you're not falling asleep, let's go to reflect and recall. So if you just go back into, you know, that breath, and you're just relaxing on the outer breath, you're just noticing if you've got holding any tension anywhere. I'm not going to go into a really big, deep meditation type of thing. This is just a little taster. But you're just relaxing and breathing and just enjoying this process, a little bit of fun. And I want you to sort of just think back and just allow your mind to sort of wander back to a time where you felt really wonderful gratitude for something. And I want you to just explore that in your mind, how it felt, where were you, who you were with, and just bring those feelings back into the now with you. So you're just recalling everything about those moments of gratitude and how wonderful it was. And that feeling of really deep appreciation, I'm kind of getting it here. I'm sort of feeling this wave of appreciation coming in from those of you who had just, you're really connecting. I can feel you're really connecting to gratitude, and I'm feeling it here. I'm really kind of, it's channeling in here. And if you've got anything to share in the chat box through this process, you know, just share it or share it at the end. It's all good. And now we're just going to come back, and we're just going to bring those feelings with us to this present moment. So you're sitting in your chairs or wherever you are, just watching this webinar. And I'm imagining from the feeling that I'm getting through from you guys, I'm feeling that the sense of peace and relaxation, the sense of a little bit more sense of unity of us all on this call. And that's another webinar. So just share, if you will, if you're feeling any of that. And especially the people who, some of you I know, and as therapists, we can be very sensitive and very empathic, and we can really feel when we connect to others. And now we're just going to move into Imagine Design. So now with this lovely feeling that is rocking around the internet, let's just imagine, where do you think that you could bring more gratitude into your life? How do you want to design? And then I'm going to say to you, but you could say to your patients, you know, if you wanted to record of these things that you recognize as gratitude, that make you feel good, how would you do that? Would you want to do something like a journal? Some people find that really useful. Some people just want to share it on social media. Some people want to phone a friend and share it with their friends. They want to, you know, in all sorts of different ways. Some people like to put it on post-it notes and post it around the house. I heard of a lovely thing, writing in lipstick on your bathroom mirror, something that you're really grateful for. And I'm just imagining now, as you guys are all sort of feeling that, do you want to just go back? No, we won't go back in the slides, but do you want to go back to that first scoring you did? And would you like to rescore and put those two numbers in now into the chat? And just see how, you know your scores. We won't know the individual people, but just imagine what those scores are now. And if you feel now more empowered to reach just a little bit higher, and for those of you who could reach to a 10, you masters, it's wonderful to know that some of you already are there. And so please, everybody, just share in the chat anything that you want to share. And we're just going on now to our little exercise called Rewiring the Brain, a 21-day practice. And this is my last slide. So with this, really dead simple, 2 minutes at a time. So it's 2 minutes at a time for 21 days in a row. 2 important things, 2 minutes, 21 days. They have to be consecutive days. And you need to be thinking about writing down 3 new things each day that you're grateful for. So it can't repeat the same things because they get stale. So this then is really interesting. It starts to retrain the brain, the pattern of scanning, and you start to scan for the positive first rather than our predisposed patterning of looking for the negative. So thank you, everybody. And Chris, are you going to come back online?
I am, thank you. I feel all zenned out now. I feel all sort of lovely and gentle and zen. Thank you.
And did your scores go up, Chris?
Yeah, they did actually. I was just sort of mulling. I was thinking how interesting it is as we practice gratitude. So just more space becomes available for more gratitude. It's just a beautiful. And I know from the work that I've done with my clients, the impact that 21 days of gratitude has just on everything that is in their lives is extraordinary. Yes, so I encourage you guys to, as many people say, try it yourselves first and then see what happens, and then experiment with your patients, because it'd be really beautiful. So, Liana, I'm aware of time. Sorry, we have overrun, so forgive us. Have we? Yeah, we're off. Have we got any questions, Liana?
And I think I'm gonna just round it up with just one question. It may be more than one, but as therapists, how important is what we say to our patients or clients compared to what they say to themselves?
Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, it's really important, because one thing that we didn't touch on is hold the space. So you, as a therapist, you would imagine the highest potential that your client can, or patient can attain. And it's got to be reasonable. You've got to be able to believe it. You've got to see it yourself, and you have to believe it yourself. You can't just pretend. And then you hold that space for them until they can step into it themselves. So it's vitally important that we hold that larger vision for them. What would you say, Chris?
I think it's 2 things, isn't it? It's basically our patients, our clients look to us as kind of the experts. And so if we're saying, actually, I hold a space and I believe it's possible, then they can step into that and go, well, if you think it's possible, then I want to make that possible for myself. And I think it's really important as therapists to pay attention to what patients say about themselves, and to find a very gentle way to invite them to think about themselves in a different way. So yeah, I think it's both of them are really important, but we are the people who, I totally agree with Caro, who hold the space. And I remember when I was training to be a therapist years ago, my teacher once said, if you can't love your client, then don't work with them, because you won't be their best therapist.
I want to end with 2 things. To say that thank you to everybody that attended. This is the most connected and lovely chat box room that I've ever seen. Everyone, we're feeling grateful, saying thank you. It's just amazing. And an anonymous attendee has said, thank you so much. It was a lovely presentation. I can see how I should continue with the way I work with my clients without being worried about my managers questioning me about the time I spend with my clients on motivating them and support them. And I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
The pressure of the EDD and the need to discharge, capacity, etc. But actually, like you said, if you can't love and know your client, how can you get them into that mindset to then achieve that healing and their goals? So beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
They were all
we've
going,
run
"Thank
over
you."
time. I got a bit carried away with the bliss.
Because it was perfect. It really was.
Thank you, everybody,
Brilliant.
and blessings.
Yeah, and I put in the chat how people can get the slides and by joining our mailing list. And if you want to join our community or you want to talk to us more, then as you saw on the slides, you can email us at contact@rrc.life or access our community via www.rrc.life. But thank you, everyone, and really take that Zen now into a nice bath and bed.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.